There is something happening every day that few people notice. Humanity is gradually losing connection with itself, not because of a lack of time, but because of an excess of noise. Everything moves too fast. Too many things to do, too many things to achieve, too many things to prove. Yet the faster they run, the emptier they feel. The more they gain, the more they fear losing. And in this endless chase, one thing has been forgotten: the silence of the soul. I once stood in a crowded square surrounded by the sound of car horns, people talking, advertisements flashing on giant screens, and suddenly realized no one there was truly present. Each person was absorbed in their own world, a world built from worries, expectations, and doubts. But behind it all, something has always been waiting, a call that does not sound through noise yet is clearer than any sound, the call to return to the true self. This world has never lacked light. People have simply stared too long into the darkness. They are hypnotized by scarcity, conditioned by fear, controlled by concepts that were never proven. They believe peace is a luxury reserved only for those who are settled. They believe power lies beyond their reach, and that life is something to be endured. But the truth is the opposite. Peace does not come from outside. It originates within, and it has never left. The more chaotic the world becomes, the stronger the inner call grows. It is a kind of ancient memory, not of the brain, but of the soul. A deep voice that reminds you there is something beyond all definitions, something that cannot be shaken by change, cannot be worn down by time, cannot depend on anyone or anything, and that is your true essence. People ask, how do I know which is the true call and which is the echo of the ego? The answer is simple. The true call never makes you shrink back in fear, never makes you feel small, lacking, or unworthy. It does not shout, it does not coerce, it does not bargain. It only whispers, but with immense power. It promises no reward but brings recognition. And when you hear it, even for a fleeting moment, everything around you seems to stop. No more rushing, no more confusion, only a knowing, clear, profound, beyond words. Awakening is not a journey to find something new. It is the letting go of what is false. It is to stop believing in the masks layered over you through the years. It is to remember who you were before the world told you who you had to be. And the first step of awakening is not knowledge, but the courage to pause in the unceasing spin and listen, to pause in the midst of struggle and feel, to pause in the crowd and return to yourself. No one can answer the call for you. No one can awaken on your behalf. But when you are ready, the universe will speak in unison. A book will fall into your hands at the right moment. A sentence will strike at the right place. An event will occur not to punish you, but to awaken you. The outer chaos is not random. It is the mirror reflecting what is fracturing within humanity. But for that very reason, it carries the greatest opportunity, the opportunity to return. You do not need to become a better person. You only need to return to what was already good. You do not need to strive to be worthy, for you have never been unworthy. You do not need to run somewhere else to find peace, for peace has never left you. What is needed is not more knowledge, but the release of outdated beliefs. Not learning how to control life, but learning how to trust life. Not doing more, but remembering what has always been present. There is a silent center within you, unmoved by all turbulence. It is unaffected by markets, weather, or the words of others. It does not measure you by achievements or past mistakes. It knows only one thing: you are a sacred part of the whole. And when you return to that place, you are no longer a victim of circumstances. You are a creator, no longer living in anxiety about what is to come, but living in the awareness that everything you need is already here. In this chaotic world, not everyone hears the call. But once you hear it, truly hear it, you cannot go back. You cannot pretend you never knew. You cannot continue as if everything were the same. For once the light has touched you, darkness no longer holds its old power. Once you have seen truth, falsehood can no longer convince you. And once you have remembered your true essence, everything else must realign. This is the beginning, but it is also the return. A return not loud, not needing to prove, only requiring that you choose to listen. And when you listen, you will know awakening does not come from forced effort, but from silent consent. It does not come from climbing upward, but from allowing yourself to fall inward, to fall into yourself. And there the kingdom has never been absent. It has only been waiting for you to remember. You do not need to be ready to begin. You only need to be silent enough to hear. Just one moment, one breath between the noise is enough to begin a journey you have already carried in your heart. No one can answer the call for you, but when you hear it, you will know it is not a voice from outside. It is your own voice, long, silent, patiently waiting. And when you answer, the universe answers with you. There is one of the simplest yet most revolutionary statements ever spoken. The kingdom of God is within you, not high above in the heavens, not after death, not in some sacred place out there, but right within you, in the deepest chamber of your soul. This is not a metaphor, not a symbolic image for vague comfort. It is a direct affirmation of the most fundamental truth of life. You are not separated from God. You have never been excluded. You have never left the place that has always been yours. And if that is true, then every search outside is only temporary. Every physical pilgrimage, every form of ritual, every effort to be worthy is only a way for the mind to feel safe. But the soul does not need to prove. The soul knows its place. And when you are quiet enough, you will feel that whisper that you do not need to go anywhere because the place you need most has always been yourself. The world teaches that happiness lies ahead, that salvation rests in a belief system, that wholeness comes only after you have paid the price. But what if all of that is just the result of forgetting? What if you already had everything from the beginning but were persuaded into believing you were lacking? What if the kingdom does not need to be found but only remembered? Truth does not need defenders. It only needs to be lived. And the truth is, you carry within you the divine image, not as a distant potential but as a reality already alive. You do not need to pass into another life. You do not need to complete a series of spiritual tests. You do not need anyone's permission. You only need to recognize. And in that moment, what you thought was far away will appear more clearly than ever. Many ask, if the kingdom truly is within me, why do I still feel empty, anxious, and restless? The answer lies here. The presence of the kingdom never disappears, but your awareness of it can be obscured. Just as the sun never stops shining, but you can live under dark clouds and believe the light has vanished. Everything you feel is only a reflection of the thoughts you choose to hold. The kingdom is not conditioned by circumstances, but your mind can be. And awakening begins when you are humble enough to stop blaming the world and turn inward with one single question: what am I placing my faith in? The kingdom does not require your striving. It only asks for your release. Release the false identities. Release the belief that you are not good enough, not pure enough, not holy enough. Release the habit of living as if you were a lost creature thrown into this world without direction. No, you are not lost. You are on the way home, and what you are returning to is not a place but the original essence, union with the source. From the moment you dare to believe that the kingdom is within you, everything begins to change. Not because the world shifts instantly, but because you are seeing the world with new eyes. You stop begging, you begin to give. You do not seek love. You become the embodiment of love. You do not plead for peace. You walk as though you are peace itself. And this is not arrogance, but a profound reverence for the truth alive in you. Some may think that to claim oneself as the dwelling place of the kingdom is too bold, but nothing is more humble than accepting the truth. It is arrogance to believe you are separated from God. It is humility to understand that I and the Father are one. When you live from that consciousness, you no longer need anyone's approval. You no longer live in fear of judgment. You are no longer dragged by lifeless rules. You become free not to do whatever you please, but to live exactly as what you truly are. And from that freedom, you do not become isolated. On the contrary, you begin to see everyone with different eyes. No one is separate. No one is left out. Every human being in any state carries within the seed of the kingdom. Some remember early, some forget long, but no one is abandoned. When you see that truth in others, you are living from the kingdom. When you no longer react with anger but with compassion, you are living from the kingdom. When you stop judging, stop dividing, and begin to see everything as part of the sacred whole, you are no longer outside. You have entered within. And the miracle is, you do not need to do anything to keep that kingdom, because you cannot lose what has never left you. You only need to remember, only need a moment of stillness, only need to place your hand on your heart and know that what you once sought in churches, in books, in sermons, has been here from the beginning, in this breath, in the truest thought. In every moment you live without defense. That kingdom is not loud, not glamorous, not conditional. It is present like a cool breeze drifting across a summer noon, gentle but undeniable. When you realize it, you no longer need to argue about right and wrong. You no longer need to prove your truth. You simply live, and your very life-awake simple whole will be the most living proof. Perhaps yesterday you still felt lost, but that is all right. The kingdom does not leave because you forgot. It waits patiently, waiting for a glance returning, a sigh in the midst of a busy life, a moment of letting go of control, and when that moment comes, you are no longer the seeker, you are the one who has seen. The kingdom has never been far. You had only been looking the other way. But from this moment forward, if you wish, you can walk with a certainty that every goodness you ever prayed for, every blessing you ever hoped for, every light you ever waited for, is not ahead, not elsewhere, but alive within you right now. And from here everything begins, not from expectation, but from recognition. If people truly listened to his words, there would have been no walls, no labels, no divisions in the name of faith. He did not come to build a religious system. He did not come to gather people into an organization and then separate them by dogma, rituals, or styles of worship. He did not come to construct religious power, much less to establish a presumed moral standard for humanity. He came to give a key, not a key of metal nor a key to open the gates of heaven after death, but a key to open the innermost door within the place where the sacred kingdom waits to be recognized. Every word he spoke, every act he performed carried a meaning beyond language. Nothing he said was accidental. Every parable was a formula. Every miracle was a demonstration. And every statement contained a cosmic law unchanging, not bound by time, not limited by religion, race, or status. But the world listened to him as though to a distant deity instead of a man awakened who pointed the way. People chose to worship his image instead of practicing the consciousness he embodied. And so instead of freedom, they continued to live in fear, in waiting independence. No one is excluded from what he taught. Those principles were not reserved for the moral, the insiders, or those who believe the right way. They are for anyone alive, anyone who thinks, anyone who longs to understand truth beyond the surface. He said, "He who has ears, let him hear." Not he who has a title, not he who has a certificate, but anyone whose heart is quiet enough to receive something that could completely overturn the way they live, that you do not need to learn more to be enough. You only need to remember what has always been true. What he left behind was not a system of doctrines to classify people as good or bad. It was a set of laws for one to reflect upon oneself, to realize that within each person lies a creative engine, consciousness, thought, faith. Follow me was not an invitation to enter an institution. It was a call to walk in the same direction, to operate at the same vibration, to live from the same starting point, the union between you and the source. But when people feared the simplicity of truth, they built layers to make it appear more solemn. They created intermediaries, complex systems, conditions of necessity, and then they forgot that the key never rested in anyone else's hand. The key lies in awareness. When you grasp a truth not intellectually but through lived experience, no one can take it from you. No one can deny what you have witnessed, and no one can hand it to you in your place. He did not leave a building. He left a foundation. Not of bricks and stone, but of spiritual law. You reap what you sow. You see what you believe. You live what you think is real. And if you change your belief, you change your life. If you adjust your thought, you adjust reality. If you realize you and God are one, you enter a realm of presence where separation, lack, and guilt no longer exist. That is not a promise. It is a principle. There is a reason people often choose fear over freedom. Freedom demands responsibility. And true responsibility means you can no longer blame circumstances, other people, or even the will of God. Because once you hold the key in your hand, you can no longer pretend to be a victim. Once you know that you yourself open and close the door, you can no longer fault anyone else for still standing outside. And that is what he came to show. Not to control you, but to return to you the power you had forgotten was yours. People once tried to kill him for these things, because it is not easy to accept that a man could declare, "I and the Father are one." But that was not an arrogant proclamation, it was an awakening. For if he could say it, then you can too. If he could live from that state of consciousness, then you are invited to live likewise. Not like him in appearance, but like him in consciousness. That state has no name. It is not any religion. It is the return to the source of truth where all forms dissolve, and only one thing remains. I am. No one can walk the path for you, but the path has already been laid, not by dogma but by the lived experience of one who transcended illusion and returned to the inner light. And that person left footprints not for you to worship, but for you to follow, not by imitation, but by awakening. Religion may help you begin, but it cannot replace the living truth. Rituals may be gateways, but no one lives at the gate forever. You must walk through. And walking through is not to escape, but to enter the real, where you no longer live on borrowed belief, but from what you know in every breath. When you hold that key, you no longer ask, whom should I follow? You begin to ask, from where am I living? When you truly understand what he taught, you are no longer drawn into debates of right and wrong. You become quiet yet clear. When others argue over who is chosen, you simply live as one who is already chosen. No proof needed, no miracle required. For the greatest miracle is you are awake and you remember. That key does not wear down with time. It is not outdated by era. It does not lose effect with circumstance. It is eternal because it comes from what never changes, spirit. And if there is one thing you must carry in this journey, it is this: not more theories, not more laws, but a silent commitment to yourself. I will live as if the kingdom is already here, and I will open the door, not waiting for someone else to open it, not needing anyone's approval, because from the beginning it was my right to receive it, and now I choose to use it. There are truths that do not arrive through argument, do not appear as myths, and do not need to be framed by dogma. They come like a still breeze, like the first light of dawn, like something you know for certain, though no one ever taught you. Each person carries within a map, not drawn in ink, but in intuition. And in that map there are doors that cannot be opened by hand, only by awareness. Every time you awaken from an illusion, one lock falls away. Every time you release an old identity, one hinge moves. And then, from where it seemed there was nothing, a door opens. That door does not lead outward. It opens into the kingdom within. The 15 keys are not a checklist of techniques. They are not meant to be memorized by the mind, but to be lived by the soul. Each key is a principle, a spiritual code, a fragment of light, strong enough to dissolve darkness in the deepest corners of the mind. You do not need to hold all of them at once. Just one, if rightly understood, can completely transform the quality of your life. For awakening does not happen by quantity, but by depth. Each key is a level of awareness, and every time you enter that level, your life reflects in a different way. But remember, these are not concepts invented. They are truths already engraved within you, only forgotten. Forgotten because you were trained to doubt. Forgotten because you lived too long under conditioning. Forgotten because the world taught you to trust what can be measured, weighed and defined, while neglecting the only thing real, the lived experience of union with the source. The first key does not promise to open everything, but it opens the most important thing, a new vision of yourself. When you change thought, you do not merely change to positive thinking. You change the frequency, you emit the language of the subconscious, the operating system of the reality you are experiencing. Every thought is a command. And when you think differently, you issue a different command to the universe. The second key is not just a reminder that the kingdom is within you. It is a resetting of the starting point. You no longer seek happiness as a reward. You live from happiness as a natural state. From here, everything outside is only a reflection. You no longer beg for love. You become love. You no longer wait for external conditions. You become the condition. The third key is the law of mind. It operates like gravity. You do not need to believe in it for it to hold true. Everything you keep in mind, whether hidden or clear, will one day manifest. You cannot sow resentment and reap peace. You cannot feed lack and live in abundance. Your mind is a field. Thoughts are the seeds. What you sow, you live. The fourth key is conscious prayer. Not pleading, not bargaining, not performing rituals to gain approval. True prayer is the act of aligning with truth. It is the affirmation from awareness that what you ask has already been given. It is the consistent vibration with goodness until it appears, not because you persuaded God, but because you harmonized with what was already waiting for your agreement. The fifth key is faith. Not the vague, baseless belief, but a profound, living, fierce certainty that dissolves every doubt. True faith does not need proof, does not need display. It knows. And in that knowing, everything you envision becomes what you experience. The sixth key is love. Not emotional affection, but the state of recognizing all as one. This love does not discriminate. It does not depend on conditions. It does not vanish when rejected. It is the highest wave, the strongest field, the frequency where miracles become as natural as breathing. When you live from love, you no longer have to do it right. Every action becomes right because it begins from the right place. The seventh key is forgiveness, not as a moral act, but as a release. When you forgive, you are unlocking the chains you yourself wear, no longer living in the past, no longer bound to pain, no longer letting an old memory dictate your present vibration. Forgiveness does not change what happened. It changes who is living with that memory. The eighth key is silence. Not the silence of lips, but the stillness of mind. There you hear what has no words. You receive guidance not born of logic, and you touch a state that cannot be disturbed from outside. This silence is not to escape, but to meet the eternal within. The ninth key is prosperity as harmony. No longer seeing wealth as sin or reward, but understanding it as the natural expression of flow when you no longer resist. When within you is fullness, the outside must respond. Not because you strive, but because you have expanded awareness enough to receive. The 10th key is gratitude. Not thanking after things turn good, but gratitude as a way of living. A state that recognizes goodness already present, even if outer form has not yet appeared. Gratitude does not change God. It changes you, and you are the magnet for everything you are willing to acknowledge. The remaining 5 keys will gradually be revealed, but one thing is certain: you do not need to open them all at once. Each key opens only when you are ready, not through knowledge, but through vibration. When you live from truth, you do not need to remember the principle, you become the principle. When you no longer repeat the formula, you are the living expression of it. And from that point, you no longer ask, how many keys do I need to open the door? You begin to realize you are the door. And each time you remember, a part of the kingdom opens right in the present. No waiting, no condition, no distance, only the deep consent: I am ready. And with that readiness, the door of awakening opens not from the outside, but from within you. The world does not begin outside, it begins within you. No one has ever lived a life that was not shaped by what they believe to be true. Thought is not just something that drifts through the mind like passing clouds. Thought is an operational command. It is a wave being transmitted. It is the blueprint to which reality silently and faithfully conforms. People change, environments change, people change strategies, but they forget to change thought. And so life repeats in the same patterns, only with new costumes. But form cannot save a reality if its foundation still rests on old beliefs. Thought is like water, colorless, formless, tasteless, yet capable of being clear or murky, nourishing or drowning, refreshing or eroding. Thought never stops flowing. You cannot block it, but you can completely direct it. And here is what few are taught from childhood: you can choose your thoughts. No one has the power to force you to think something without your consent. But conversely, if you do not actively choose, thoughts will be chosen for you by habit, by public opinion, by memory, by wounds, or simply by unconscious repetition. This first key does not teach you to mechanically think positively. It does not ask you to paste artificial affirmations on your lips. It speaks of a true inner exchange where you begin to replace limiting beliefs with liberating truth. Because nothing limits you more than believing something is impossible, and nothing opens new life more than a new awareness of what you are worthy of experiencing. Thought is the starting point of everything you see. A person who never believes they are worthy of love will not receive love, no matter how many love them. A person who carries thoughts of lack will make an abundant reality appear scarce in their eyes. A person who believes the world is dangerous will see only things that confirm that fear, not because the world is objectively so, but because thought is the filter, the lens, the negative from which life develops the photograph. If you want the world to change, the first and most important step is to change thought, not just a little, but at the root, not merely repairing, but replacing the entire operating system. Not to become someone else, but to return to the one you already were before you were trained to think wrongly about yourself. Every new thought is a seed, and when it is kept long enough, watered with persistence, it will sprout unstoppable. You cannot think I am small and live as one with power. You cannot hold the belief everything is hard and receive goodness easily. The contradiction between belief and expectation is why many pray endlessly without seeing results, because you do not receive what you want. You receive what you are, and you are the sum of the thoughts you continually nurture. Changing thought is the work of awareness, not emotion. You may not feel belief in something new, but if you are persistent enough to hold the new thought, to repeat it, to contemplate it, to live as if it were true, then sooner or later, the subconscious will agree. And once the subconscious agrees, the physical world must adjust. It cannot help but respond. Imagine each thought as a frequency wave. Every time you think I am not enough, you are transmitting a short, weak, distorted signal. But if you think I am created from fullness, the frequency sent out is strong, coherent, clear. And the world will synchronize with the stronger, consistent wave. The universe does not respond to the words you speak in prayer. The universe responds to the frequency you continually transmit through the thought you truly hold when no one is watching. Old thoughts will resist. They will whisper that you are being fake, that reality is not that simple, that you should be more realistic. But remember, what is called reality today is the result of thoughts you believed yesterday. And if you do not change thought today, your tomorrow will look no different from your yesterday. Change does not happen through an external miracle. Change happens when you cut off the old stream and begin a new one from within. This key requires patience, for you are re-establishing your vibrational map, and you may have to choose a new thought 100 times a day. But that is fine. Each time you choose again is a reinforcement. Each time you refuse to return to the old path is a step deeper into freedom. No one may see the process, but the result will appear clear, undeniable. And when it does, people will call it luck. But you will know it is the direct effect of quietly, persistently changing each thought, each idea, each reaction, each way you look at yourself. You will have changed the world without leaving your seat. Because the true world is not out there. The true world is what you are radiating every second through the thought you choose to keep. The first key does not promise that everything will be easy, but it guarantees that from now on you will no longer live as a victim. You become the one who chooses reality, the one who actively rewrites the program, the one who strikes the keys of consciousness to reprogram the entire experience. And you do it not for anyone else. You do it because you know when thought changes, the whole universe changes with it. And nothing can stop a mind that has remembered its power. Human beings have gone very far to search for what has always been very near. They have climbed mountains, crossed deserts, dived into deep seas, traveled to sacred temples, read hundreds of ancient books, only to finally realize, when exhausted, and when every external road leads to a dead end, that the only door they have never stepped through is the door within. The kingdom of God is not in the clouds, not in a place waiting after death, not in a sect, a ritual, or a fixed formula. It is within you, right now. No waiting, no conditions, no need to be chosen. You only need to stop and recognize. You may have been taught that salvation comes from the outside, that there is some force somewhere that decides your fate, that only by strictly following a set of rules will you be worthy to enter heaven. But if that were true, then why are there people who follow no ritual, yet live lives full of light, love, and freedom? And why are there those who belong to the strictest religions yet are still full of resentment, suffering, and fear? It is not that you need anything more. It is that you have forgotten what you already have. The second key is the reminder that everything you seek is already present within you. Nothing missing, nothing lacking. The kingdom has never been lost. It has only been covered with dust, the dust of worries, the dust of memories, the dust of prejudice and limiting beliefs. But the kingdom remains there, untouched, whole, waiting for your return. When you live as though the kingdom is within you, everything begins to change. You no longer behave as one asking for permission. You act as an heir. You no longer plead for guidance from outside. You listen to the inner voice where clarity surpasses all advice. You no longer ask, "How can I be worthy?" For you know from the very beginning you have always been worthy. The kingdom is a state of consciousness, not a location. It has no map, but it has signs. Anywhere there is deep peace, unconditional love, boundless acceptance, freedom from judgment, that is the kingdom. And when those qualities begin to arise in you, you no longer need anyone's confirmation. You know, and that is enough. The hardest part is not finding the kingdom. It is believing that it truly resides in you. Because the world has taught you the opposite. Since childhood you have been programmed to believe you are lacking, you are wrong, you are not enough, you need fixing. And if you believe that long enough, you forget how to recognize the light within yourself. You grow accustomed to living as a beggar when within you is a treasure without bottom. This key does not require you to withdraw from the world. On the contrary, it invites you to live in the world but not belong to its illusions. You can work, raise children, do projects, pay bills, yet still hold the awareness. I am not these roles. I am part of the sacred kingdom, and I bring that light into everything I do. And then you will see your presence begins to change the atmosphere of the places you enter. No need to proclaim, no need to explain. Just by truly living from within, others will feel it. Perhaps they cannot name it, but they will feel safe around you. They will feel lighter speaking with you. They will sense something deep, steady, peaceful that they cannot explain. It is the kingdom itself radiating from you, like the fragrance of a flower that needs no advertisement. You do not need an external miracle to prove this. The true miracle is when you shift from lack to knowing you are complete, from waiting to acting, from resentment to forgiveness, from striving to giving. Such transformations are not visible in a second, but over time your whole life will no longer be the same, and then you will not need to convince anyone that you have entered the kingdom. They will see it for themselves through your eyes, your words, the quietness of your presence. A strange thing will happen when you truly know the kingdom is within you. You stop searching, but it is then that what you once dreamed of begins to find you. Not because you pulled it in, but because you have become the fitting place to receive. The universe does not respond to your wishes. It responds to the level of awareness you have of who you are. And when you remember that you are the bearer of the kingdom, you no longer need proof. You become the proof. This is not a beautiful concept meant to comfort you. This is a truth, living simple, clear. And if you do not believe, try living one day as though the kingdom is within you. Do your daily work from the state of one who already has enough. Speak kindness, not out of morality, but because you cannot help but radiate what you are living. Forgive not because someone deserves forgiveness, but because you no longer wish to keep wounds inside that sacred space. Then you will see little by little the outer world reflects the inner change. No need for speed, no need for perfection, only constancy. Like morning light, not blinding, not noisy, but unstoppable. The kingdom is within you, always has been. Independent of who you are, what you have done, whether you are good enough. The only question is, do you still believe in separation? Do you still think you must go somewhere else to find what is already yours? Do you dare to stop and look within to see the door that was never closed? This second key is not for you to understand more, but for you to remember. And when you remember, you no longer live as a seeker. You live as one who has found. And from that state, you begin to truly live, not as a temporary self, but as part of the kingdom expressing itself through your every action, every glance, every breath. Not events, not people, not circumstances. Thought is the root cause of everything that happens in life. The mind is not merely a place that stores memories or analyzes logic. It is the origin. It is where every seed begins. It is the broadcasting center that continuously generates vibration, shapes emotion, determines behavior, and ultimately designs lived experience. Some believe they live in an objective world, but that world always passes through the filter of thought. Two people face the same situation. One sees opportunity, the other sees failure. One feels motivated, the other is paralyzed by fear. The difference does not lie in the circumstance. It lies in the content of their minds. This key is not just a philosophy to ponder. It is a law of operation as precise as gravity. Whether you believe it or not, whether you know it or not, it is functioning every second. You do not need to try to make the law of mind work. You only need to understand it is always working, and it will respond faithfully to whatever you consistently hold in thought, regardless of whether it is what you want or do not want. Every thought is a seed. If you sow the idea of lack, you cannot reap wholeness. If you hold resentment, you cannot experience freedom. If you embrace fearful scenarios, you cannot walk in peace. Your mind is not biased. It has no emotions. It simply performs its function to bring into reality what you have chosen to keep. And that is the power and the responsibility of each person. You are the one sowing, not your parents, not society, not the past. No matter what you have learned, what you have experienced, who has influenced you in the end, you are the one permitting that thought to exist in your mind or not. The law of mind is absolute justice. It does not reward the good and punish the bad. It does not care whether you are worthy or not. It only responds to the frequency you are transmitting. And if you are broadcasting fear, then even if you pray with all fervor, you will still attract things that reinforce that fear. Conversely, if you are transmitting trust, then even without words, the entire universe will rearrange itself to respond to that trust. Many plead for change, but within their thoughts remain the same. They speak of freedom, but inside they are still shackled by shame. They want success, but their thoughts cling to the definition of failure. They dream of love, but still doubt their own worthiness. And then they ask why prayer does not work, why effort yields no result. The answer lies here: until thought changes, results cannot change. True transformation begins within. No one can live a different life while keeping the same thoughts. Because everything you do, say, decide, choose, is the effect of what you believe to be true. And what you believe, whether spoken or not, will manifest in results. This is not condemnation. This is liberation. For if thought is the root cause, then you do not need to wait for permission to change your life. You do not need others to change so that you can have peace. You only need to turn inward, examine the soil where you are planting, and begin to change the seed. A new seed beginning with a new belief. Imagine you are the gardener. Each day you tend the garden of your mind. You can leave weeds to grow envy, comparison, judgment, doubt, or you can choose to sow other seeds: gratitude, kindness, hopefulness, and without anyone seeing, day by day, that garden will transform, quietly, without display, but surely. This third key invites you to become master, not of the external world, but of the inner mind. And when you master that deeper layer, you will no longer be swept away by surface turbulence. For you know, though waves rise high, the current beneath remains steady. You no longer react by habit. You consciously choose thought like a conductor choosing the rhythm for the entire orchestra. And then, little by little, reality around you begins to shift. Relationships grow lighter. Work begins to flow. Opportunities appear not because you were lucky, but because you broadcast a new frequency. The universe always responds precisely. It never misses a vibration you send. This is a journey requiring patience. For old thoughts have long-established habits, but each time you choose again, you affirm your mastery. Each time you resist old reflexes, you expand freedom. Each time you hold a new thought, though circumstances have not yet changed, you reset the current of destiny. Thought is the root cause. Thought is the beginning. Thought is the mold for everything you call reality. And if you are brave enough to look at the thoughts you are nurturing, you will know exactly why your life is the way it island. But do not stop at awareness. Choose again. Choose thoughts that reflect the truth of who you are, not the fear of who you are. Choose thoughts that open the kingdom, not close possibility. Choose thoughts that set you free, not ones that keep you imprisoned in an invisible cage. And when you choose the right thought, you do not need long prayers. Life will adjust itself, because you have done the most important thing. You have changed the root cause. And when the cause changes, the result cannot help but change. There are words that drift through space and vanish. But there are also words, when spoken at the right time in the right state, that shake the deepest layers of reality. Not every word carries power, but each word, if it arises from the center of profound consciousness, carries a vibrational command, like a small vessel carrying light to sow across the unseen dimensions. And that is prayer. Prayer is not persuading an external force to change its mind. It is not a plea. It is not a performance to show the divine that you are worthy. True prayer is a science, a deliberate creative state, a vibrational act where words become the tools that strike the subconscious, like a blacksmith striking glowing metal, shaping reality into form. This key opens a truth long forgotten. You do not pray to change God. You pray to change yourself, to change the vibration you are transmitting. And once you change your vibration, the universe cannot help but respond in a new way. For too long, people have associated prayer with desperation. When there is no other option, they pray. When every plan fails, they pray. But that is a misunderstanding. For when you pray in panic, you are broadcasting the vibration of panic. And though your words may contain beautiful language, the subconscious hears only one thing: you feel lack. And the universe, perfectly faithful, will return that lack with more lack. Scientific prayer does not begin with the emotion of pleading. It begins with the knowing that what you ask for already exists in the unseen. It begins with identification that you are not an outsider asking permission, but the channel of reception and distribution of the kingdom. It begins with words no longer distorted by fear, but resonating from a consciousness of trust, clarity, and coherence. Your words are not merely tools of communication. Every word is a vibration. Every vibration is a signal sent. Every signal sent will return by the law of correspondence. If you say, "I cannot," the universe will agree. If you say, "I am unworthy," the subconscious will reinforce it. But if you say, "I am the channel of abundance," and hold that belief as a reality unfolding, then even if the eye has not yet seen, the door will begin to open. Scientific prayer requires you to understand words do not only express thought, they reprogram it. When you use words deliberately, you are not just sending messages outward, but also knocking on the door of the subconscious, repeating a new definition of the self you choose to become. And if repeated with unwavering faith, the subconscious will accept that definition as a new truth. Prayer is an act of creation, not a passive reaction. It does not depend on fleeting emotions, but on a deep state of awareness. You do not need to feel very holy to be allowed to pray. On the contrary, it is precisely by praying daily, consistently, clearly, coherently, that your mind becomes purer, clearer, more attuned to the inner truth. A true prayer does not need to be long. It does not need to be complicated. It does not need religious language. It only needs to be real. Real from state, not from form. A whispered "I am living in light," if spoken from the depth of awareness, is more powerful than a ritual lasting hours, but uttered from fear and doubt. You do not need to wait for silence to pray. Prayer is not a pause, but a flow. It is the breath released with intention. It is the continuous choice, moment by moment, to bring your words back to the right frequency. Every sentence you utter throughout the day is a form of prayer. What is that sentence broadcasting? What is it reprogramming? What seed is it planting in the subconscious? And if you let your words flow with emotion, anger, judgment, worry, sarcasm, you are praying as well. But you are praying for disorder. No one escapes the act of broadcasting vibration. But you have the right to choose which vibration. And that is why words must be guarded like gold. This key reminds you your mouth is the broadcasting gate of the soul. Every time you open it, you are speaking to the entire universe. No word is neutral. Every word you speak is a vibrational order, and that order will be delivered at the right time, in the right way, with the exact clarity you sent it. So pray every day, not because you are weak, but because you are practicing the highest creative power. Speak words of truth, not truth in the sense of information, but truth in the spiritual sense. You are the channel of light. You are the expression of the kingdom. You are the bearer of the divine image in every cell, every thought, choice. And remember, the most powerful word is not the shouted one. It is the word spoken from the deep silence within. A true prayer always begins in silence. Not silence of sound, but silence from fear, from judgment, from doubt. And in that silence the word will be given, and that word, if spoken with faith, will not return void. Prayer is not something you do in despair. It is something you live every day. And when words become deliberate, creative tools, you are no longer a passive figure in your own life. You are the one knocking on the door, and the door, as promised, will open. Not because you spoke many words, but because you spoke the right ones, the right state, the right essence, the right frequency, and the right moment. Not the eyes, not the ears, not any physical sense. Faith is the only bridge that connects the world you are living in with the world you have not yet seen, between what has already manifested and what is forming in the unseen, between the present self and the brightest version you can become. Without faith, you only react to reality. With faith, you create reality. People often misunderstand faith. They think it is a heated emotion, a blind belief, a kind of self-suggestion to try to believe. But true faith is not loud. It does not need to shout to affirm itself. It does not need proof to exist. It is silent like roots, yet it nourishes the whole tree. It does not sway with every gust of circumstance. On the contrary, circumstance must adjust to match the frequency that faith holds. Faith is not hope. Hope always carries waiting. Faith is different. Faith is knowing. Knowing even when nothing is visible. Knowing with an unshakable certainty. knowing to the extent that every action, decision, and emotion begins to operate from what is unseen, as if it has already happened. This key points out that everything you are living today, whether joy or sorrow, abundance or lack, is the result of the faiths you have cultivated before. You may not call them faith, but every notion you cling to, every idea you believe is true about the world, about yourself, about the future, is a form of faith. And the law of mind, which does not distinguish between good and bad, right and wrong, simply manifests whatever you believe most strongly. There are those who believe they are unworthy, and they live their entire lives within limits of their own making. There are those who believe true love does not exist, and no matter who they meet, they see only reflections of doubt. There are those who believe life is always hard, and no matter how many opportunities pass by, they still find ways to reinforce that belief. And then there are those who believe that goodness is flowing toward them, and strangely every door begins to open, even though circumstances are no different from anyone else's. The difference does not lie in external conditions. It lies in the structure of inner faith. When you understand this, you no longer strive to control circumstances. You turn inward and begin to rebuild the bridge. A bridge that is strong, unbroken by change. A bridge that leads you from the unseen to what is waiting to be revealed. Faith does not require perfection. It only requires persistence. A faint light, if kept daily, becomes the sun. A small idea, if not abandoned, though no results are visible, will begin to attract vibrations of the same frequency. And little by little, the unseen moves. People you have never met will appear. Doors you thought closed will open. Things you once called miracles will become a natural part of your life. But faith does not operate from anxiety. It does not arise from the state of "I must believe" or "everything will collapse." That is not faith. That is fear wearing a spiritual disguise. True faith is not based on urgent emotion. It is based on awareness. What I am envisioning has already been created in the depths. I do not need to rush. I do not need to doubt. I do not need to see it with my eyes to know it is real. And because I believe, I adjust my living to align with it. I do not speak as one who is lacking. I do not act as one who is powerless. I do not choose from a place of doubt. I live, decide, give, and receive as though I am already in that kingdom right now. This key also invites you to examine the system of faiths operating in your subconscious. Be honest with yourself. What do you truly believe about life? What do you believe about yourself? About money, about love, about the future, about God? What you say aloud may be the orthodox belief, but how you react daily in panic, in judgment, in choice, that is the real faith you are living. You cannot build a new life while holding the same old faith. And no one can replace you in this task. No one can believe on your behalf. No one can live on your behalf. No one can give you faith if you have not chosen to believe. And once you choose, you do not need proof. For faith does not wait for proof. Faith is the cause, and proof is only the result. Begin with the smallest things. Choose to believe that a day can begin anew, even if yesterday was full of chaos. Choose to believe that light is still flowing toward you, even if your eyes cannot see it. Choose to believe that within you, there remains a part that knows the way home. And choose to believe consistently until what you once called faith becomes a living experience. You do not need great faith to begin, only a mustard seed. But hold it like a flame. Breathe into it daily with reminders. Use your words to strengthen it. Act as though what you desire is drawing near, not to make it come faster, but because you already know the bridge has been built, and what you have not seen is on its way. Faith is not demand. Faith is alignment. It is when you stand in the same current as the kingdom. It is when you stop resisting the flow and begin to move with a strength greater than reason. And when you stand in that current, nothing is impossible, for the bridge has connected, and from there all things can be revealed. Among the countless unseen laws that govern the world, there is a force that cannot be measured, cannot be analyzed by instruments, yet it is the axis upon which everything turns: love, not the fragile, fleeting emotion, not passing infatuation, but a state of being strong as gravity, enduring as light, and precise as any physical law humanity has ever discovered. Love in its spiritual sense does not come and go like emotion. It does not depend on whether someone is worthy or not. It does not need to be returned. It has no condition. It only has presence. And wherever love is, there is order, healing, harmony, and life rekindled from the depths. This key invites you to look again at your entire life, not to analyze mistakes, but to see clearly every turmoil within, every fracture in relationship, every inner resistance to the flow of life. All stem from the absence of love. Not the love of another, but the love you have not chosen to radiate. There is no law in the spiritual world stronger than love, no vibration higher than the vibration of compassion, and no act, however small, is ever forgotten when it flows from the state of pure love. Love not only soothes the soul, it recalibrates frequency, it untangles the knots of chaotic energy within you, and more importantly, it transforms you from one who fears into one who shines. When you love, you are not weak. You are stronger than any weapon ever made. When you love, you are not vulnerable. You become untouchable, because you no longer expect anything in return. True love does not rely on response. It is a deliberate act, like light that continues to shine without needing praise. People often confuse love with endurance. They think love means resignation, that it means overlooking everything, that it means silence even when hurt. But love is not surrender. It is the highest energy in the universe. No one can reach the depths of spirit while bypassing this dimension. The key of love is not found in emotion, it is found in choice. You choose to love even when others are not like you. You choose to love even when circumstances are not perfect. You choose to love as a natural response to life, needing no reason, no condition. And the strange thing happens when you love rightly. You no longer feel lacking, because love always carries fullness with it. Love not only heals relationships, it heals the body, it heals memory, it dissolves the energy of fear stored in the subconscious layers. Wherever you bring love, that place begins to be realigned, like sunlight crossing dry ground, awakening seeds that seem dead. And the most beautiful part is you do not need to wait for someone to love you first. You are the one who begins. You are the one who initiates. You are the one who chooses the vibration required. When you enter a room with a heart full of love, the entire space changes, not because you manipulated it, but because you changed yourself. And what you are is always stronger than what you say. True love does not need to be proclaimed. It can be present in the eyes, in listening, in nameless patience, in a silent blessing you send to someone. It is gentle as the wind, yet shakes the hardest structures in the human heart. And when you live from that place, you are not just living well, you are operating at the frequency of the kingdom. Love does not exclude. It embraces without blindness. It sees clearly the wounds of others, yet does not define them by those wounds. It touches the highest part within each person and awakens that very part. When you love someone rightly, they tend to want to become a better version of themselves, not because you forced them, but because the love you carried reminded them of the sacred quality already theirs. And if there is any place in you that still resists, still judges, still insists on keeping the line between me and them, turn back and ask, have I truly chosen love? Have I stopped fearing? For wherever love is, fear no longer exists. No fear of being hurt, no fear of being abandoned, no fear of not being enough, because love does not require you to be enough before loving it loves, and from that you become enough. This key does not ask you to be perfect. It only invites you to practice. Each day, each moment, choose again. Choose love instead of fear. Choose compassion instead of criticism. Choose listening instead of arguing. Choose trust instead of closing off. Not to be loved back, but to free yourself. Love, when radiated in its true essence, is not only the center of spiritual life. It is the foundation of every miracle. It is the beginning place of real transformation. It is the atmosphere in which every good seed can sprout. And when you return love to the center, every other law falls into its right place. For everything revolves around one thing: are you loving? If the answer is yes, then you are in the right place, the right rhythm, the right frequency. And from there, all things are possible. There are things we think are over, but in truth, they still lie silently within us, like a knife not yet pulled from the flesh. Forgotten memories are not necessarily healed. Wounds left unacknowledged, unhealed, continue to shape how we think, how we love, how we see the world and ourselves. And among all the doors that lead to spiritual freedom, none is more important than forgiveness. Forgiveness is not a gift you give to others. Forgiveness is liberation for yourself. Forgiveness is not surrender. Forgiveness is the most powerful act a soul can make to return to its original purity. because you cannot carry the chains of the past and step into the kingdom of the present. That kingdom only opens to those who have chosen to release. Release does not mean forgetting. Release does not mean calling wrong right. Release is not denying that you were hurt. Release is looking directly at that pain, acknowledging it, and then no longer letting it control your life. Forgiveness does not change the past, but it takes back the authority over the present. Some people hold resentment in their hearts for many years, not realizing that this energy quietly blocks every flow of goodness. You cannot receive fullness when your heart is crammed with old images. You cannot truly love if a part of you remains locked out of fear of being hurt again. You cannot create the future if the past is still a wall between you and life. Forgiveness is not an emotion that comes and goes. Forgiveness is a decision repeated daily until it becomes a spiritual habit. You may not feel light immediately. You may still feel pain, still think of what happened. But every time you choose forgiveness, you reclaim a portion of energy that was being held captive. You slowly untie the knots that bound you to moments that no longer exist. And you do not always need to face the one who hurt you. Forgiveness does not require a meeting. Forgiveness does not require an apology. Forgiveness is a matter between you and you. Between you and the divine within you. Between you and the door to deepest peace. When you forgive, you declare, I choose not to live in the shadow of the past anymore. I choose light. The paradox is this: people think forgiveness is the hardest thing, but living without forgiveness is what is truly hard. For you must spend enormous energy holding on to anger. You must build walls, hide wounds, guard yourself from everyone, create layers of masks. You do not only become emotionally exhausted, you become spiritually weary. And that energy itself can become illness in the body, depletion in the soul, fractures in relationships. When you forgive, you lose nothing. You only lose resentment. You still have memory, but you are no longer controlled by it. You still have experience, but you no longer define others or yourself by what happened. And once you step into true forgiveness, you will realize something: you are no longer the same person. A part of you has been reborn. Forgiveness is not only for others. Forgiveness is even more necessary for yourself. Forgive the mistakes of the past. Forgive the unwise choices. Forgive the moments of weakness, blindness, or silence. Forgiveness does not mean I was right. It means I have learned. When you forgive yourself, you do not allow yourself to repeat old errors. You give yourself the chance to live from a higher self. You may think, I want to forgive, but I do not know how. Begin with words. Say, I choose to forgive. Even if the feeling has not caught up, speak as though it is true. Repeat daily. And one day your heart will believe what your mouth has spoken. Then transformation begins. Forgiveness does not need others to change. Forgiveness does not require worldly justice to be served. Forgiveness is your choice not to tie your life to anything less than love. Forgiveness is ceasing to repeat the old story. It is ceasing to tell the wound as if it were a medal. It is choosing a new chapter, lighter, wider, deeper. And if there is something in you that still cannot let go, know this: you are not alone. The light within you is still waiting for your return. Forgiveness is the road back to yourself. No one else needs to walk that road for you. And no one else can stop you from entering the new land, where memory is no longer a chain, but only the foundation for rising. This key, if you truly use it, will open the door to freedom. Not outer freedom, but the deepest freedom. Freedom from the very chains you did not realize you were carrying. And from there, you do not merely live. You begin to truly live. The world is noisy not because there are too many sounds, but because people do not know how to stop and listen. Everything seems to be shouting for attention, news, opinions, emotions shared before they are even understood, fleeting conversations that lead nowhere. In that chaos, few realize that the most sacred does not come from echoes, but from silence. Silence is not the absence of sound. It is another depth where every noise recedes like foam pulling back from the shore, revealing the true ground beneath. In that silence, there are no more justifications, no more inner voices constantly commenting, judging, worrying, comparing. Only a vast space remains where the divine can speak without being interrupted by the echoes of the mind. The key to silence is not about escaping sound, but about opening an inner space where you no longer react, no longer chase what happens outside, no longer try to prove or control. There you do nothing, yet you are fully present. And it is in that state that every ripple of the spirit begins to settle, allowing you to hear what has never been lost, only drowned out. People often fear silence because in it there is nothing left to cling to. No one to praise you, no data to process, no story to retell. But precisely because of that, silence is the only place where you no longer play a role. It is where you stop being someone and begin to simply be yourself. No mask, no title, no role. You and life face to face. No walls, no intermediaries. For ages, spiritual masters have sought deserts, mountains, caves, or wilderness not to escape the world, but to hear what the world cannot teach, the wordless voice of the eternal. In that silence, they did not search for answers, they became the answer. Because in silence you no longer ask, you know. This key does not require you to abandon life. It only invites you to create small moments where you pause all doing. Each day, just 15 minutes, close the windows of the world and sit not with any goal, not to meditate well, not to relieve stress, simply to be present. And then you will see life has never abandoned you. It has only been waiting for your return. In silence, everything becomes clear. The problems you struggled with for days without solutions suddenly flash into your still mind. Emotions once tangled suddenly arrange themselves in order. And deeper still is the reminder that you are not the one managing you, are the opening through which a greater force works. Silence does not require perfect conditions. You do not need to retreat to mountains or monasteries. You can carry it into daily life, in a pause before replying to an email, in a breath before reacting, in 5 minutes by the window doing nothing. Every action you take from that silence becomes different. It is no longer reaction. It is the expression of divine wisdom. Those who live in silence are not those who speak little. They are those who do not need noise to prove themselves. Their words carry weight not because they are loud, but because they come from a place unmoved. Every step, every glance, every presence carries a force, not explosive but radiating. Because silence is not merely not speaking. It is a spiritual field. When you learn to return to silence, you will no longer be led by the outer world. You no longer need to win arguments, no longer get swept into the race of knowing everything. You live deeper, slower, but clearer. Every moment becomes an opportunity to touch the eternal, and from there you begin to live from within, instead of being pulled from without. The key of silence is also the key of intuition. In stillness, what is right often appears without reason. You know, not with intellect, but with a deeper layer of awareness, and you no longer doubt yourself. For once you have heard that inner voice, you will no longer search for guidance from the world. Silence is also medicine for the overloaded soul. No therapy is as effective as simply sitting down, breathing steadily, and letting thoughts fall away like autumn leaves. In silence, you do not try to eliminate anything. You simply observe, letting them pass. And then you realize there is a part of you that has never been disturbed. You only forgot it too long. Silence is also the environment of creativity. No profound idea has ever come from noise. Every discovery, every poem, every song, every solution to life springs from the wordless space. And when you allow yourself to dwell more often in that stillness, you do not need to force thoughts, ideas will come to you. Finally, silence is not an end. It is a beginning. It is the foundation. It is the necessary condition for all other goodness to be built securely. You can read hundreds of books, listen to thousands of lectures, memorize every formula of prayer, but if you do not spend time in silence, you will only hear the echoes of others, never the call of the divine within you. And one day, in a moment of complete stillness, no phone, no expectation, no worry, you will hear something. Not with ears, not with words, but with your entire presence. And you will know the eternal has never been absent, only that you have just learned how to listen. Prosperity is not a goal, it is a result. Not something you must chase, but something that appears naturally when you live in alignment with spiritual order. When every layer within you, thought, emotion, attitude, faith, operates in harmony, prosperity becomes unstoppable. It does not need to be created, it only needs to be allowed in. Prosperity is not just money. It is the feeling of abundance. It is fullness in time, ideas, relationships, health, joy. It is the state of not being lacking, not being distracted by lack. It is living as though you are standing in the middle of a flowing river and you know you always have your share. People often attach prejudice to prosperity. They think it is the materialization of life. They think a prosperous person is someone who has more than others. But the truth is, prosperity has nothing to do with more or less. It has to do with harmony. A person may have little money yet still live in prosperity because they are not lacking within. Conversely, a person may have much yet still live as though something is missing. They are always hurried, always anxious, always feeling insufficient. Because they have not understood the essence, prosperity is an inner state, not a number. This key leads you back to the source of prosperity, the mind. What signal is your mind transmitting? A signal of lack or a signal of fullness? A signal of fear or a signal of trust? A signal of forcing or a signal of receiving? Every outer expression is only reflecting that. You cannot expect prosperity to flood in if within you the broadcast is resistance. The important thing to understand is, you do not need to make prosperity happen. It already exists. It is flowing around you like an invisible current. But like electricity, you must turn the switch on. And that switch lies in faith, in thought, in how you see life and yourself. Who are you in relation to life? Are you a beggar or an heir? The truly prosperous do not live for money, they live from wealth. They do not act in order to receive, they act because they have already received. Every action comes from the state of knowing they always have. And that very energy attracts further corresponding expressions, not through the law of attraction as some spiritual game, but through principle. What is inside becomes the image outside. Prosperity cannot come from blind effort. It comes from understanding that you are not a victim of circumstances, of the market, of the economy, or of others. You are one who chooses to live in divine order. And in that order there is no lack, only misdistribution. When you adjust within, the flow will naturally adjust without. You may have heard, whoever has will be given more. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken away. This is not a punishment, it is an exact description of a law. When you live in the state of having, whether gratitude, peace, joy, or service, more of the same will be added. When you live in the consciousness of lack, everything seems to diminish. The prosperous are not those who only know how to receive, they are those who know how to give, because giving is a way of affirming that you already have. Each time you give, you break the inner poverty consciousness. You send a signal to the universe, I am no longer afraid of lack. And the universe always responds to such clear signals by expanding further what you already have. Giving is not an act to be praised. It is an act to keep the flow from being blocked. A pond that stands still will rot. A river that keeps flowing remains fresh. Prosperity is never hoarding. It is circulation. It is giving and receiving happening like breath, effortless, uncalculated, unhesitant. You do not need to have much to begin prosperity. You begin with a shift in awareness, with gratitude for what you already have, with ceasing to speak of lack, with ceasing to use fear as motivation, and from there, little by little, everything changes. The door opens. Opportunities draw near. A call, an idea, a new connection. Because when you adjust within, the world without cannot help but reflect it. Prosperity is also serenity. It is the ability to say enough without fearing being left behind. It is daring to rest when needed. It is not being envious when seeing others succeed. It is joy in seeing resources circulate rightly. It is peace in the heart, untouched by prices, trends, or news. In the end, prosperity is not a destination. It is how you walk. It is the posture you choose to live from. It is the answer you give each day. Do I believe this life is enough for me? Do I believe I am a channel of abundance? Am I willing to stop fearing and start receiving? If the answer is yes, you have begun to open the door. And if hesitation remains, know this: no one but you can open that door for you. And that door is not far away, it is within you. The key is harmony. And prosperity is the light from within when you choose to live in divine order. Not begging, not grasping, not forcing, only aligning. There is a kind of energy that needs no specific form, yet it can completely change the structure of your life. It does not require deep knowledge. It does not need elaborate rituals, nor does it depend on circumstances. It is as small as a whisper, yet strong enough to turn the course of destiny. That is gratitude. Gratitude is not an act of politeness. It is not a social reflex when receiving something. Gratitude is a vibrational state, a subtle yet powerful frequency. When you live in gratitude, you are broadcasting a clear message to the universe. I recognize that I am living in a gift. I overlook nothing. I see, I feel, and I honor it. Some ask, I am struggling, what do I have to be grateful for now? But precisely when you think you have nothing to be grateful for is when you need gratitude the most. Because if you are only grateful when everything is smooth, that is not faith, that is reaction. But if you can be grateful in your darkest days, then you are anchoring yourself in a light that cannot be extinguished. Gratitude does not change circumstances instantly, but it changes you, and you are the element that shapes circumstances. A grateful heart is an open heart, and when you are open, the flow is allowed to enter. Gratitude is agreement with life. No resistance, no demands, no bargaining. Only I accept, and I thank you. Each morning, if you begin your day with a moment of gratitude, not long, just sincere, the entire energy within you will shift to a new frequency. Everything you do afterward will be different. Your words gentler, your thoughts brighter, your approach softer. And the result, doors that were once closed begin to open. Gratitude is also a spiritual habit, not always natural but always trainable. When you master this habit, you are no longer manipulated by trivialities. Someone being late, something not going as planned, an awkward word all no longer throw you off balance, because you now have a root within, and that root is gratitude. Some think gratitude is accepting fate, but no, gratitude is not surrender. Gratitude is the first step of creation. When you are grateful for what you have, you allow it to expand. When you are grateful even for what has not yet come, you are inviting it nearer. And when you are grateful even for what once hurt you, you are affirming, I am not defeated, I am growing. You do not need much to begin gratitude. Look around. If you are breathing, you have reason to be grateful. If you still have someone to love, a place to return to, a dream to pursue, you are already living in wealth. You just have not named it. Gratitude is not listing achievements. It is looking at the ordinary and seeing the miraculous in it. Each time you say thank you, even silently, you are resetting your entire energy frequency. That phrase is like an invisible code opening the next layers of grace. And grace is not random. It is the natural response of the universe to a soul that honors what it already has. Gratitude does not exclude aspiration. It lifts aspiration to a higher level. When you are grateful, you no longer desire out of lack, but out of fullness. You act not to fill a void, but to share wholeness. And from that place you create results that are more lasting, deeper, and more harmonious. In difficult moments, instead of asking, why me, try asking, in this, what lesson can I be grateful for? That question does not erase pain, but it turns you in a new direction. It gives you back your agency. And when you see life as a grateful learner, no event is meaningless. There are those who lost everything, then began again with a single, simple sentence each morning. Thank you that I can still feel. From what seemed like the bottom, they began to see light. Not because everything changed on its own, but because they themselves had changed. And when a person changes, life cannot help but reflect it. Gratitude is the bridge between the present and the miraculous. It is the open door through which every blessing enters. It is the welcome you extend to the good, both what is here and what is coming. You do not need to know exactly what will happen next. Only one thing: keep your heart in the state of thank you. What needs to come will come. What needs to go will go. And you will remain with the peace that cannot be taken away. Finally, when you reach the depth of gratitude, you will see you need nothing more to live a full life, because fullness does not lie outside. It begins within, where you choose gratitude, not for a reason, but because you have awakened to see every moment unfolding now is a gift, and you need only open your hands to receive it. When we look at someone and rush to a conclusion, we lose the chance to truly understand them. When we label, compare, criticize, or condemn, we not only wound others, we also limit ourselves. Judgment is a habit deeply rooted in the mind, disguised under the name personal opinion. But beneath it lies fear, a defensive ego, a mind that has not yet learned to see through the eyes of love. The 11th key is one of the hardest to grasp: non-judgment. Not because it is too lofty, but because we are so used to living in separation. Right, wrong, good, bad, should not, fit, does not fit. And whenever something goes against the fixed assumptions in our minds, we react with resistance or with criticism. But the more we react, the more blind we become. Non-judgment does not mean becoming blind to what is wrong. It does not mean agreeing with everything or abandoning discernment. Non-judgment means refusing to play the obsessive game of separation between ourselves and others. It means stopping the habit of seeing people as problems and beginning to see them as fellow learners just like us. Each time we judge someone in truth, we are reflecting a part of ourselves we have not yet learned to love. A quick-tempered person tends to criticize hot tempers. Someone struggling with self-esteem easily calls others arrogant. What we notice in others often mirrors what we are avoiding within ourselves. Judgment is simply the way we push the issue outside, so we do not have to look inward. But no liberation can come from avoidance. To live more freely, we must release the need to label, because each time we label someone, we imprison them and ourselves within a narrow frame. We no longer see who they are. We only see them through our lens. We are no longer present. We are reacting to our own prejudice. The path of non-judgment is the path to dissolving conflict. For conflict does not begin with weapons but with thoughts, with assumptions that seem harmless but carry the energy of exclusion. When we pause for a moment before concluding, when we take a breath before reacting, when we ask, if I were that person with those circumstances, how would I be? Something within us begins to soften. Non-judgment is also a way to heal, because when we stop judging, we begin to accept. And acceptance is the foundation of love. Only when someone feels unjudged will they dare to open their heart. Only when a soul feels safe will it dare to change. Thus, non-judgment is not only a lesson for ourselves, it is a gift we give to others. The world already has too many signs, saying, not good enough, not beautiful enough, not smart enough, not the right standard. But you can be different by choosing to see through those outer layers, by seeing the light in others even when they cannot see themselves, by keeping silent at the right moment and speaking at the right moment, not to condemn but to lift up. This key will challenge you every day. In ordinary conversations, in the moments you scroll through social media, while listening to the news. When someone treats you in a way you did not expect, and precisely in those moments you have the opportunity to practice. Each time you choose not to react in the old way, you take one step into freedom. Small steps, but steady. Non-judgment does not make you weak. On the contrary, it is the greatest inner strength, for only those who have reconciled within can cease fighting without. Such a person does not need to win every argument, does not need to be right in every situation. They choose peace over ego. And when you live in non-judgment, something miraculous happens. Those around you begin to change, not because you tried to fix them, but because you stopped pushing them into defense. The atmosphere around you grows lighter, interactions become more authentic, connections grow deeper. Because you no longer erect walls of judgment, you open doors through your full presence. Finally, non-judgment is also how you treat yourself. When you make a mistake, instead of punishing yourself, breathe and remind, I am still learning. When you are not perfect, look at yourself with eyes of kindness. For if you cannot extend that to yourself, it will be very hard to truly extend it to anyone else. The world does not need more judgment. The world needs people who can see without excluding, understand without needing to fix, love without attaching conditions. And you can be one of them. Simply begin with one small decision. From today, I choose to see the good first. I choose to open my heart instead of judging. I choose silence at the right moment and love in the right way. This key is not loud, but it opens a profound stillness. In that space, no one is right or wrong. There are only human beings learning to return to their own light. And you are the one holding the lantern for them in silence with your own heart of non-judgment. There is a saying that seems simple, but if understood fully and lived fully, your life will be completely transformed. That saying is, seek first the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto you. Not last, not when you have spare time, not when life has settled, but first, before every worry, before every calculation, before even yourself. To seek the kingdom does not mean becoming a monk or withdrawing from daily life. It means placing the spiritual foundation above everything else. It is letting divine truth guide every action, every decision, every thought. It is living from the inside out instead of from the outside in. It is refusing to let trivial fears overshadow an unchanging truth. You live in a kingdom, not in a maze. This key emphasizes a spiritual order, a sacred structure, And all disorder in life begins when we reverse that order. When worry takes the first place, peace disappears. When achievement is placed above all, we lose our soul. When the ego takes the wheel, we become lost. But when we choose to return to the rightful order, everything begins to flow again. Peace, clarity, direction, and even the things we once thought we had to struggle to obtain. The kingdom is not far away. Not after death. Not at the end of a long journey. It is here in every moment we live true to the spirit within us. To seek the kingdom is to look at everything through the eyes of love. It is to listen in silence. It is to act in gratitude. It is to speak truth even when no one demands it. It is to keep a pure heart in the midst of a chaotic world. It is to believe that even when nothing is visible, goodness is still happening. Some ask, if I only seek the kingdom, who will take care of food, clothing, and shelter? But that is the trap of fear, because precisely when you set your priorities right, all else comes automatically, shall be added unto you. No need to struggle, no need to worry, no need to force, because you are connected to a supply that never runs out. You are living as an heir, not as a beggar. This key is not about withdrawing from the world. It is about entering the world with a new mind. Not a calculating mind, but a connected mind. When you place the kingdom first, everything you do, whether work, family, study, or communication, is lifted to a higher level. Every act of creativity becomes clearer. Every effort becomes lighter. Every relationship becomes deeper. Conversely, when the kingdom is forgotten, we easily fall into emptiness, even while being busy. We become irritable even when materially sufficient. Life feels meaningless even when surrounded by people. Without sacred order, even good things feel temporary. But when that order is restored from within, even the smallest things hold meaning. To seek the kingdom is to train your mind, to turn toward the higher amidst the ordinary, to choose good thoughts when it is easier to complain, to keep integrity when no one is watching, to choose silence when words could wound, to ask what is right in the eyes of love before making any decision. No one can seek the kingdom for you. There is no shortcut formula, but no one is excluded either. You need only take the first step. You need only awaken in the middle of an old reflex. You need only ask, what am I letting guide me? And if the answer is not light, then you know adjustment is needed. When you truly live by this key, life ceases to be a race, it becomes a flow. It ceases to be a checklist of tasks, it becomes a series of moments revealing the divine. You no longer ask, what will I get from this, but rather, what can I bring to this place? And you receive back more than you ever dreamed. You will begin to see the things added appear, sometimes in the most unexpected forms. A door opening, an idea arriving at the right time, a companion showing up, a peace without reason. You realize you are lacking nothing, and that very sense of already enough continues to open even more. To seek the kingdom is to live as though the divine is happening right now, not waiting, not conditional, not a promise, but a reality vibrating within you, awaiting your agreement to flow outward. And when you agree, everything else, from the smallest to the greatest, will arrive in the right time, the right way, and in the right measure. So if you are standing at a crossroads, searching for direction, confused by too many choices, return to this key. Place the kingdom first. Let light lead the way. Do what is right even before results appear. For when you seek the right thing, all else will seek you, not because you are worthy by worldly standards, but because you have lived by the order of heaven. And that order never fails. Joy is not a reward. It is a sign that you are touching the right frequency of life. Not joy brought by circumstances, but joy flowing from a deeper source beyond conditions. When you feel joy for no reason, it is not random. It is your soul responding to truth. There is a common misunderstanding that joy is something that comes only after everything is settled, after success, after recognition, after having enough money, enough love, enough security. But in reality, that so-called after is never enough. It is a shadow that keeps moving away each time you draw near. True joy, however, does not wait for anything. It is not found at the end of the journey. It is the sign that you are on the right path right here. Joy is a form of harmony, a state in which your mind, body, emotions, and spirit move in rhythm with the divine flow. It does not need climax. It does not need fireworks. It can be very light, very quiet, very subtle, like a smile. No one sees a silent moment of gratitude or a pair of eyes glowing with something that cannot be named. Some trade their whole life to find joy without realizing it was never out of reach. Because joy is not created by outer things, it is only awakened. And what awakens it is presence when you are truly here fully in this moment without adjusting, without hiding, without running away. The key to joy does not lie in controlling circumstances, but in how you engage with them. Some smile with radiant light even in sorrow. Some feel empty even in abundance. The difference is not outside. It is at the meeting point between soul and world. The point where if you allow the divine light to flow through, every experience is lit from within. Joy is not secondary in spiritual life. It is central. It is the proof that you are living close to God. Nothing resembles Him more than a soul filled with gladness, a pair of sparkling eyes, a freshness that spreads without words. Every time you choose joy in weariness, in chaos, in busyness, you are choosing to live as a living expression of God in this world. Do not confuse joy with excitement. Excitement is a temporary flare. Joy is the steady wave from the source. It is not noisy but enduring, not flashy but profound. It depends on no one, on no result, on no favorable condition. It needs only one thing: that you do not block the flow, that you lay down unnecessary burdens and allow the light to pass through. Joy is also a choice. You may not control circumstances, but you can always choose your approach. You may not stop the rain, but you can choose to dance in it. And every time you do, you open another window for the life force to enter. And it is that very flow of energy that lifts you through days that once seemed impossible. Like gratitude, joy is a vibration, a high frequency, a kind of bridge between the visible and the invisible. And when you live in joy, you become like a channel through which creativity, healing, and wisdom flow naturally. You do not need to strive to be special. You only need to be yourself, full of life. That is why children have a natural magnetism. They are not yet covered by layers of burdens, limiting beliefs, or the sense that they must do something big. They are present. They laugh without reason. They shine over the smallest things. And in that innocence there is something sacred that adults have forgotten. But you can remember and restore it. Not by going back to childhood, but by clearing away the dust that has covered the natural joy within you. Each morning when you wake, ask, with what joy will I meet this life today? That question is not shallow. It shapes the entire vibration within you. And that vibration is the most powerful prayer. For the universe does not respond to words. It responds to energy. And joy is a silent yet forceful declaration that I trust in goodness even before I see it. No one can take true joy from you unless you give it away. No circumstance is strong enough to extinguish it unless you turn it off inside. And wherever you are on this journey, whether in desert or in green valley, if you can still choose joy, you still hold one of the greatest powers. And remember, joy is not meant just for you. It spreads, it transmits, it heals. A silent smile, a loving gaze, a gentle gesture, all are living expressions of God through you. And in such moments the world becomes lighter, brighter, truer. Joy does not come after. It comes first. It is not the result. It is the cause. When you begin with joy, everything else flows from a pure root. And you will see that life, though still the same life, is illuminated by a new light, a light from within, the light of the kingdom, the light of God living, laughing, present through you. No one comes into this world merely to exist. No one is born just to repeat yesterday, then slowly fade into the oblivion of time. Your life is not a string of random events, not a game of chance, nor a copy of anyone else's. There is a profound purpose inscribed in your soul, a calling beyond words, beyond reason, that only softly resounds when you truly listen. The 14th key does not invite you to seek achievements or positions. It brings you back to the purest essence, the deep reason why you are here at this exact time in this form. A purpose that needs no title to be sacred. A purpose that does not come from the world but will transform the world when you live true to it. Spiritual purpose is not the work you do but the reason you do it. Not the role you play but the light you bring into that role. You can be a father, a mother, an artist, a worker, a gardener, it does not matter. What matters is the frequency you live from in those seemingly ordinary things. Because when you live with awareness, every action becomes a ritual. Every word can carry healing vibrations. Every interaction becomes an opportunity to embody the divine life. There is a hunger that food cannot satisfy, a thirst that fame, money, or affection cannot fill. It is the hunger of the soul, the longing to live, true to live, real to live as yourself, without masks. That longing cannot be extinguished, only forgotten. But no matter how long you try to ignore it, it still quietly knocks, still waits for you to return. And when you begin to listen to that calling, the first thing you feel is not joy but disruption, because you realize you have lived too long for what was never yours. You have tried to become someone else instead of becoming yourself. You have sought outer approval instead of inner truth. But that realization is not to condemn you. It is to bring you back, gently, decisively, honestly. Spiritual purpose does not have to be a great mission. Sometimes it is very simple to be the one who sows light where darkness has reigned too long, to be the one who keeps faith when others give up, to be the one who knows when to be silent, to be the one who does the smallest things with the greatest love. And from those seemingly insignificant acts, a new flow begins, not loud but unstoppable. You do not need to create a purpose for your life. You only need to remove the dust that has covered it. It has always been there, like an original blueprint, like a background melody that still plays, just waiting for you to be quiet enough to hear. And when you listen deeply enough, you will see that purpose does not need to be proven. It only needs to be lived. Every day, every moment, every conscious choice. There is a paradox when you live true to your deepest purpose. You no longer feel the need to prove your worth. You no longer have to compete, no longer crave praise, no longer be driven by the fear of being left behind. Because you are walking a path that no one can replace and no one can judge, you become steady not because the world approves of you, but because you have approved of yourself. And then from that depth, outward things begin to change. Relationships become more genuine. Work becomes more soulful. Time becomes fuller. Life is no longer a chain of things to do, but a chain of opportunities to reveal the sacred in every action. You become someone who lives, not merely exists. And one who truly lives is never meaningless. Spiritual purpose is also the foundation for every lasting transformation. You can change habits, thoughts, behaviors, but if you do not know the deeper why, you will easily slip back into old patterns. But when you know clearly, I am here for the light to flow through me, then every choice carries new weight. Every moment holds a different meaning. And even failure is no longer an end, but a stepping stone to return to the right path. If you are lost, do not rush to seek the answer. Seek the right question. Not what should I do to succeed, but what was I born to contribute to life? Not how can I stand out, but how can I live true to the divine within me? When the question is right, the answer will come gently, clearly, like a nod from the kingdom within you. Do not wait until it is too late to begin to live true. Do not wait until everything is perfect to allow yourself to live right. Every step right now, even small, is a step home. And when you choose to live from spiritual purpose, you do not just change your own life. You are helping change the vibration of the entire world, one resonance at a time. And the world needs you, not a copy of someone else, not a version edited to meet expectations, but you original awakened living true to the reason you are here. That is not only a key, that is a bell calling you to rise, to shine where you stand, and to walk as if every step is a prayer. Because indeed, when you live with spiritual purpose, your very life becomes a prayer, not needing words, not needing ritual, but soaked in the presence of God in every breath. No one can see the wind, but everyone can see the leaves move. In the same way, no one can see Christ consciousness with physical eyes, but they will recognize it in every glance, every word, every presence of yours. That consciousness is not a belief. It is a vibrational state, not a doctrine, but an embodiment. Not something to speak about, but something to live with. Christ is not a personal name. It is the symbol of the level of consciousness where a human being touches the divine within, where there is no more separation, no more struggle, no more sense of lack or fear. In that state of consciousness, you are no longer someone trying to become better. You are living as an embodiment of the goodness that already island. And precisely in that state of consciousness, the kingdom is no longer a distant concept. It becomes reality. Not an external reality, but a reality flowing through you each time you choose love, instead of resentment, forgiveness instead of judgment, silence instead of adding to conflict. Each time you choose like that, you are not only living rightly, you are becoming a clear mirror for the light to shine through. Many people think Christ consciousness is something lofty reserved only for saints, but the truth is everyone already carries that seed within. The difference is whether anyone waters it each day, whether anyone clears away the stones of resentment and fear so that it may sprout. You do not need to become good enough to touch Christ. You only need to be silent enough, honest enough, and courageous enough to live from that place. Christ consciousness does not come through effort, but through surrender, surrendering the small self, surrendering the habit of control, surrendering the need to be right, to be more, to be greater. And it is precisely in that letting go that you hear the wordless voice, feel the invisible presence, and live in a depth that the world cannot measure, but the soul recognizes immediately. You do not need to withdraw from daily life to live in Christ consciousness. On the contrary, it is precisely in everyday life amid work, children, conflicts, and busyness that you are invited to express that light. Not with sermons, but with presence. Not with solemnity, but with gentleness full of compassion. Not to impress, but to remind others there is another dimension of reality, always present, waiting for them to return. In Christ consciousness, you no longer act out of fear of being wrong, but act out of love. You no longer live to protect the ego, but to express truth. You no longer seek value in success, recognition, or roles, for you know you have carried divine value long before doing anything. And that awareness creates an unshakable foundation, a strength that needs no display. Every person you meet is an opportunity to embody that consciousness. Some come to test you, some come to awaken compassion, some come simply so you may learn to love unconditionally. And when you begin to see every interaction as part of the awakening journey, you stop reacting and begin creating. You stop trying to win and begin serving with your light. Christ consciousness does not arrive in supernatural moments. It arrives when you wash dishes with gratitude, when you listen to someone suffering without judgment, when you stand in the midst of chaos without letting your mind be swept away, when you choose honesty even if it costs you advantage. Those seemingly small acts are the bricks quietly building the kingdom, not somewhere far away but right where you stand. There is a strange stillness in that state of consciousness, a certainty that needs no proof, a faith that needs no reason. You no longer need everything outside to be perfect, to be at peace. You become peace, and then that vibration itself begins to soothe everything around you. That is not passivity. That is a profound, active choice to live from the source, not from reaction. And then you will see there is no more need to try to love because you have become love. No need to try to forgive because you have transcended the realm of the wounded mind. No need to chase goals because you are living in the current that already knows exactly where you must go. Life becomes a subtle collaboration between you and the source. In fact, there is no longer you and source as separate, only union. Christ consciousness does not rally anyone to follow. It does not create followers. It awakens those who sleep, gently, patiently, without force. And you, when you live in that consciousness, also become an awakener, not through preaching, but through the quiet, steady, compassionate presence of one who has remembered who they are. Who were you before others labeled you, before life taught you to fear, before memory defined you as a limited character? The answer is not in the past. It is alive within you and ready to rise each time you choose light over darkness, each time you choose honesty over pretense, each time you walk as if the kingdom is already present, because truly it already island. This final key does not close anything. It opens the real door. For when you live in Christ consciousness, you not only recognize the kingdom, you are the very door for the kingdom to be revealed. In every moment, in every breath, in every person you touch with your awakened heart. There comes a moment in the journey when you pause not because you are tired, but because you realize you have been searching for what has never left you. The keys you once thought you had to travel far to find turn out to be right in your hand, and in truth they were never something outside of you at all. Because in the end, you are no longer the one looking for the key. You are the door itself. Every spiritual search, whether it begins in faith or in doubt, is a journey of return. A return to what has always been there. A return to the sacred part that was never lost. A return to the pure consciousness that has not been covered over by forgetfulness. And when you truly stop, truly fall silent, you see there is nothing left to attain. There is only what must be embodied. There are no answers to be found far away. There is only the deep presence with yourself in this very moment. You are the door. Not the one standing outside waiting for someone else to open it, but the very door through which the light passes, the door through which life takes form, the door where the kingdom is no longer hidden behind the veil of doubt, but is seen, felt, and entered. No rituals needed, no permission required, only a new awareness: I have carried everything from the very beginning. This is not a consolation, this is a vibrating truth. Every person has within them the capacity to reveal the kingdom. No one is excluded, no one forgotten. The only thing that separates you from a life of fullness is the old belief that you are not enough, not ready, not chosen. But those are only false doors. The true door is you when you live in alignment with the truth inside. And living in alignment does not mean living perfectly. It means living honestly. It means you no longer pretend not to know. You no longer look for ways to postpone awakening. You no longer blame the world for what you have not yet dared to choose. From the moment you are willing to stand still, to look within, to ask the hard but honest questions, you begin to open. And when you open, the world around you begins to change. You once thought you needed to keep learning, but learning is only to remember, not to accumulate. You once thought you needed someone to guide you, but the true guide is the intuition within the voice that has whispered again and again, even when you ignored it. You once thought you needed to prove yourself, but Christ consciousness does not need degrees, resumes, or recognition. It only needs a human being willing to live truthfully, to dare to shine, to dare to love, without condition. When you become the living door, you no longer need many words. Your presence itself is a message. The way you listen is already a healing. The way you remain silent in chaos is already a spiritual act. Every moment you live from your inner core, without masks, without roles, you are opening the path for another world to appear, a world of truth, of light, and of freedom. And then you realize you do not need to walk through a door to come closer to God. You are the very place where God steps into this life. Every action of yours is an expression. Every choice is a prayer. Every conscious breath is a nod to the kingdom within. And the world, always waiting for something grand, was in fact only waiting for someone awake enough to live truly. You were not born to become a better version of the old self. You were born to transcend it, not to control life, but to trust the sacred current flowing through you, not to collect more spiritual labels, but to become a silent space where everything is released, every illusion taken down, and life is seen as it really island. When you live as the living door, you no longer ask, what will I get? You ask, what am I allowing to pass through me today? Light, compassion, truthfulness, gratitude, peace, or simply the full presence of a human being who no longer runs from themselves. The world does not need more wise people. The world needs open doors. It needs people who dare to live with hearts unguarded, with minds no longer shaped by fear, with souls no longer imprisoned by prejudice. And the miracle is this: when one door opens, the light does not enter only one room, it fills the entire house. You are that house, and you are that light, and you are also the keeper of the door. No more searching, no more waiting. You are already ready. No one else can open the door for you, but no one else can close it once you have chosen to open it. And when you truly open, not with thought but with life, you will no longer question the meaning of your existence, because your life itself will be the answer. Clear, strong, without justification, without striving. You have traveled far searching for something sacred, but now you are no longer the seeker. You are the place where the sacred happens. You are no longer the one holding the key. You are the door. And every living door opens into the same kingdom where no one is excluded, where light does not discriminate, where you are wholly yourself, complete, free, and full. No one can seize the kingdom by force. It cannot be taken by argument. It cannot be built by formula. That kingdom does not belong to those with more power, more virtue, or more knowledge, because it has never been out of your reach and has never been under anyone's control. The kingdom does not come through victory, it comes through revelation, and that happens only when you return within. Unlike earthly kingdoms where ruling, dividing, and striving are the essence, the kingdom you carry in your heart needs no protection, nor does it need to be fought over. It has no borders, no territory, no throne outside. It is a realm where everything operates in harmony, where power does not come from control but from union with the divine. And because it is a realm of reality, You do not need to reach it with physical effort. You only need to allow it to be expressed through you. Each time you choose honesty over pretense, love over fear, stillness over argument, you are opening space for that kingdom to be present. No proof required, no rituals needed, no strain. Only a presence subtle enough to no longer separate itself from the source. You cannot own the kingdom because you cannot possess what you are already part of. The only thing you can do is let it live through you. The kingdom does not come because you are better than yesterday. It comes because you are truer to yourself today. For only in that honesty do the masks fall, and only when the masks fall can the light pass through. Many still think the kingdom is a reward for those moral enough. But no, it is your essence, even before you made mistakes, even before you knew the idea of right and wrong. The issue was never whether you are worthy. The issue is whether you realize you have forgotten, and whether you are brave enough to remember. When you live from the outside in letting the world decide who you are, letting circumstances dictate your emotions, letting others define your value, you are closing the door to the kingdom. But when you live from the inside out, letting the inner light be your compass, letting love be your heartbeat, letting truth be your breath, then you no longer need to search. You are already there. The kingdom does not need you to build anything more. It only needs you to take down the unnecessary walls, the walls of prejudice, the walls of memory, the walls of shame, the walls of I am not enough. When those walls fall, nothing more is required. The kingdom appears on its own like the sunrise that needs no one's help to rise. You cannot conquer the kingdom by willpower, but you can block it with fear, not because the kingdom is weak, but because its revelation always respects free will. You cannot force yourself to see the sacred, but you can stop denying it. And sometimes, simply ceasing to resist, ceasing to hide, ceasing to obsess over what is outside, is enough to see clearly what has never left you. The kingdom is a state. It does not arrive when everything is perfect. It arrives when you choose to live from the deepest place, when you eat a meal with gratitude, when you look at someone with unconditional kindness, when you forgive yourself without justification, when you remain silent to listen instead of reacting. All these small things are the gates through which the kingdom enters life. No one can bring the kingdom to you, but anyone can remind you that it is there. Through the way they live, through the way they love, through the way they stay calm in chaos. And you, if you live as such a reminder, do not need to preach, do not need to persuade anyone. You only need to be present. You are the mirror. The kingdom reflects through you. It needs no more light, only for the dust of forgetfulness to be wiped away. And when the mirror is clear enough, others will look into it and see themselves not the limited ego, but the sacred essence that has never been harmed. You are not the warrior of the kingdom. You are its expression. You are not called to defeat darkness. You are called to become the light. And the light does not argue with darkness. It only shows up and the darkness disappears. So do not seek to conquer the kingdom. Do not make it a destination in the future. Let it be revealed right here within you, through the way you breathe, through the way you choose goodness, even when no one sees, through the way you walk in daily life, as if something deeper is happening in every moment. That kingdom is not majestic in the worldly sense. It needs no robes, no trumpets, no acclaim. It only needs a heart quiet enough to feel what cannot be spoken, a mind open enough to receive without needing to control, a soul that has ceased striving to finally be itself. You do not have to go far, only turn within. You do not have to become different, only return. You do not have to try to display anything more, only allow what is already ready to be revealed. And when that happens, you are not only the one who sees the kingdom, you become the living witness of that kingdom. No titles required, no positions, only that you truly live as if the sacred is breathing through you. And in truth it is breathing, right now, through you. True freedom does not come from escaping something outside. It begins when you stop running from yourself, when you stop playing roles, when you stop circling around for recognition, when you remember that you have never been separated from the source. And you do not need to take another step to touch the sacred, because it is still there, still breathing with you, still living in you, still loving you even when you have forgotten. You may have studied many concepts, heard many teachings, sought many different paths, But in the end, every journey gathers into one point: realization, not the gaining of more knowledge, but the recognition of something never lost, that you are not this body, not the memories, the names, or the roles. You are the living awareness, looking through these eyes, feeling through this heart, waiting for you to remember who you are. And in the moment you remember, all chains dissolve. No more sense of limitation, no more need to strain to prove, no more fear of what is to come, because you realize you do not live from the outside in. You live from the inside out. True freedom is not the ability to do whatever you want. Freedom is that nothing outside can manipulate the being within. Union with the source does not require you to become worthy. It only asks you to stop refusing, not because you are judged, but because love cannot impose itself. It can only pour where it is received. And right where you open your heart, where you peel away the layers of I should, I must, I am not enough, right there, union begins to be felt again. The source is not far, not in books, not in calls of power. The source is the silence between two breaths, the soft light behind each thought, the unexplainable peace you feel when you drop a fragment of resistance, the wholeness of presence without condition. And when you are united with the source, you no longer ask, what should I do? You ask, who should I be in this moment? There is no shortcut, but there is also no real distance. Only one thing needed: you pause long enough to listen, not to the noise, but to the quiet invitation that has been calling within you for so long, the call home. And when you answer that call, the space inside you changes, from hurried to unhurried, from doubt to trust, from resistance to acceptance, from division to union. You do not need to reach a state of perfect enlightenment. You only need to be true enough with yourself right now, humble enough not to demand everything go your way, and brave enough to say, I am ready to live from the deepest part of me. Then every action you take no longer comes from fear, but from love. Every word you speak no longer carries defensive energy, but carries revelation, and every step you take is the step of someone who has remembered who they are. The world out there will still be noisy, still changing, still full of temptations, but the difference is you are no longer swept away, not because you withdrew, but because you now stand firm from within. You are no longer controlled by what others think, no longer need comparison to know you are enough, no longer chase the next for fear of missing out. You are here whole, clear, and free. And the most beautiful part is when you live from that union, you radiate it without effort. Others feel it, not because you teach, but because you are present. You do not say you have found the kingdom. You are the living proof that the kingdom is real and can be revealed in anyone willing to return. True freedom is when you are no longer defined by the past, no longer imprisoned by expectation, no longer controlled by fear. And that freedom comes only when you no longer divide between self and source, when you no longer plead from afar but breathe out from union, when you no longer think God is something to find but something to live. You do not need anyone to confirm this for you, because no one can live for you. But when you choose to live from the root, choose to remember you are an inseparable part of the eternal, you will see a simple truth: freedom was never lost. It was only waiting for you to remember who you are. And when you remember, truly remember, everything begins to change, not from outside in, but from inside out. You no longer ask, what must I do next? You simply listen. And from that listening, every step you take will be precise. Every word you speak will be needed. Every presence you offer will be complete. Not because you know everything, but because you are united with the knower, with the source, with truth. The journey does not end here, but from here you are no longer the seeker. You are the bearer of light. You are the place where life is expressed. You are the flow unblocked, the light unobscured, the love unconditional. You need nothing more, only to live from the deepest place, and that deepest place is the place you have belonged from the beginning. Freedom begins there, and from there everything you do is the action of a soul that has returned home.